Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Paul Kay. I'm the UX manager at InterSystems. What you've just seen is a demonstration of when a user experience does the unexpected. So there we go. Lesson over. We're done. So I want to talk today about listening to users, but I also sort of from what I've heard around the conference, and this is my first conference, I want to talk a little bit about the UX team at InterSystems and sort of what we've got in mind. And then I won't dwell on any particular thing, but I do want to be able to take your questions at the end. So why now? Why are we doing this talk? So InterSystems is making a pretty big investment in a user experience team. This is a first for them. We're a brand new group. We actually average 2 months. I've been here about 6. The rest of the team has been here for about 5 weeks. So we're really new, and it's InterSystems' first full-time team. For the record, we've used consultants and contractors over the past, say, 10 or so years, and they've been involved in lots of projects throughout InterSystems. You've probably seen some of their work. The issue with consultants and contractors is they're usually pretty siloed, right? They come in to do a thing, they do the thing, they go home again. They come back and do something else, they might do a different thing, right? And so one of the benefits of an in-house team is to say, you know what, we're actually going to get this all right and consistent across the board, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. One thing I will say is I start from the user. I practice user-centered design, user-centered right in the label. And the reason I do that is because I think it's important to solve the problem the right way first. I say that because I'm going to ask for your help, right? We are, from my perspective, you're some of my users, and I would love to hear from you and to hear anything you'd like to say, especially when we've got projects and products to deal with. You can probably deduce my email from this, but it come up afterwards. I've got cards and any of that kind of stuff. So that's the pitch. Ask us about UX. There you go. So let's get on with it. So first of all, a little bit about user experience. How many of you have heard of Don Norman? This is a guy. Okay, so he's sort of one of the founding fathers of user experience. He actually coined the term. And this is what he had to say about it. He thinks about user experience. Traditional terms used to describe design weren't sort of broad enough for him, right? He was wanting to think about the user's entire experience and their whole interaction with a particular product or a company, right? And so the way we look at it is sort of starts here, right? Over that little guy on the left is a user. I know it's not a perfect likeness, but go with me on this, right? So here's a user. What we start with is his first sort of engagement with the company, right? This is part of the experience. This could be I read a white paper, I look at the website, I go to a conference. All the way through onboarding and training and upgrades and so on and so forth. There you go, lots of drama, the whole experience, all the way to this individual no longer needing the system, retiring or something. The UX team's focus is actually on this area, right? The products, right? Because this is the place where we can have the most impact. This is the place where we have the most tools and things to employ, and this is where things work for us. We're interested in the entirety. We're really focused on products and things like that. And we're focused on various parts of the products and making them really easier to use. That's user experience. That's the user's journey. So now let's talk just a second about UX and InterSystems. This is our team charter. Brand new and minted. So our job is to create the best possible experience for our users across the spectrum of InterSystems products and services. So that's a pretty aspirational goal for 4 or 5 people. But it's what we're after, right? Our goal is to improve the experience of our products, right? To make onboarding simpler, to make it easier to upgrade and so on, to look at those key places and features where we can actually make some kind of improvement. So just a little sidestep about the process we follow. When you think about process, I actually, there are lots of versions of process out there, by the way, many of them, and lots of them have lots and lots of steps. I really think about it in 2 ways. The first thing is the question you're trying to answer, right? What's the problem you're trying to solve on behalf of your user? That's build the right thing. So this is the define step. The next step is try it out, build it, right? So we want to be able to, we want to make sure we're sort of identifying the right problem, and then we want to make sure that we're solving that problem the right way. Obviously, there are a huge toolkit of things that we want to do here. Some of them I think about it, right? I try to sort of simplify it because otherwise it sounds like this is, way too much work for everybody to do. But basically, it's what problem are we solving, right? What's the why of what our user is doing? How well do we know that? We can find that out, and then we go out there and we try it out, and we go back to that user and say, this is what we built, what do you think? So the other thing we're doing, because we're such a small team, we're in the process of defining and building this thing we call a design framework. This is some places it's called a design system. It has some of these key components in it. The page templates might include things like basic administrative page or a basic form page and so on and so forth. We have patterns in there that might include basic address block or a form, the form elements and so on and so forth, right? So all of these key design elements, plus a style guide, matched up with the code, put in a place where developers can find it so that we sort of speed the process of building user interface so that the team's time can then be freed up to think more broadly and more strategically. So a lot of the conversation I've had around the conference in the past couple of days have really focused on, so what are you doing? And we've got a huge sort of possible potential portfolio. Some of the places we're starting in particularly in health share. We are working on a couple of projects, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but again, we can talk more about those later if you want. We're working a little bit in track care to try and sort of improve that system and process, building upon what's the work that's already been done in MEUI. And we're working just a little bit in the Iris Data Platforms area. We've also had some conversations with learning services, thinking about the documentation space and so on, and also some of the internal tools that InterSystems and some of our clients get to see. So the problem here is this is already, actually health share alone is already more than 4 or 5 people can support. So what we're trying to do is sort of work on some of these projects, demonstrate some value, pull out some of those patterns, build the design framework, right? Encode some of those basic UI decisions, and then kind of use that as a force multiplier, if you will. How does that sound? Make sense? Okay, so on with the talk. I want to tell you a little story. We're going to talk about Kim. Kim is a hypothetical person. She's a persona, but she's someone I use to make sure that I'm thinking about the user in the way I do my business. The product is also sort of a composite product from previous things, right? Since we're just getting started at InterSystems, I didn't want to go too deep into anything that we're doing here, really, until we've got more to brag about. So So this is just sort of demonstration purposes, conceptual, okay? So Kim's story. This is Kim. She works at the front desk in a medical practice. And she has, as you might expect, she's got lots of jobs, right? Lots of variety out there. She's busy every day doing the list down the page. She's checking in patients, so on, scheduling, talking on the phone. Her job is busy. It's interrupt driven. Her main goal is to make sure that this patient standing in front of her actually gets in to see the doctor on time, right, and with minimal delay. So her job is partly to sort of maximize the value of the doctor's time, right? So if there's an exam room open, patient goes in. This is important because that means Kim's time with the patient can actually be very limited, right? It can even be cut short quickly, right? And sometimes, given this list of things, it's obvious that she might have a whole lot of things to do with the patient. So imagine we're a software team, we're back at a software firm, we're thinking about this, and we're saying, yeah, that's great. So possibly, one day, one of our customers comes back and says, hey, we're not collecting enough patient payments, right? So in the US especially, as you know, patient payments are sort of an increasing percentage of income for medical practices, right? And so a lot of cases, and this is, what happens is a lot of practices are not really well prepared for this, and they leave a fair amount of money on the table. So customers begin to complain. Just like happens with most customers, they come with a solution in mind, right? They thought this through, they think they understand things, they say, you know what, Kim's being lazy, we need a report. We want to be able to sort of, to tell her boss, have her boss tell Kim to get better or else, right? So the question, the first thing the product team should be thinking about is, is this really the reason, right? Are we actually addressing the real challenge here? So do we really need some kind of report that kind of tells on Kim? And the question we want to ask is, are there other reasons, right? And that's, so what we might do, actually, if you think about it, right, we've got two perspectives on the problem. Each view might offer a different solution, right? So the question is, what do we do next, right? And so we have two choices: radio button, not a checkbox. We can create the report. That's actually relatively low level of effort. It's fairly well understood, right? Here's the thing. We've got the pattern. It's very good. Or we can investigate the problem, find out what's actually going on. This might take a little bit more time. It may even take a lot of time. The issue always is, right, the customers and stakeholders and people who think they know, this is just a very human thing, right? We tend to sort of see a problem, and we're very, very good at leaping to the first solution that seems like it will fit, and sort of driving toward that thing. It's a useful thing at this point to sort of do a little bit of what Edward de Bono back in the 70s, I think, called lateral thinking, right? He's like, instead of focusing on that one problem and driving that home and spending a lot of time and dev resources on that, take a moment, think about the surrounding space, right? Think laterally a little bit. Think about whether there might be other better solutions out there, right? So here we are. So what we decided to do, push back, decide to investigate further. That's now what does that mean? So is Kim slacking? That's our first question. It's an assumption that's implicit in the idea that we need a report. So we're going to say, let's actually find that out first. If that's not the right answer, we're going to identify the real problem, right? Once we identify the real problem, to me that's 75% of design. It may be more. It's a lot of design to sort of know what problem you're solving. Hopefully, at that point, the right solution kind of suggests itself. So in order to do this, we're going to go out and talk to people like Kim, right? So we're going to do some discovery. part of this might include, right, actually sort of the full court press of this might include user observation, right, going on site as many places as we can, picking a reasonable user profile and chasing all those down, talking to novice users, talking to advanced users, right, talking to doctors, patients, and so on. You also want to talk to your own, find out what you actually already know as a company, right? So if this is a business you've been in a while, providing this kind of software, then you might want to talk to customer service, people who are user-facing, right? They have a perspective, and they probably have some insight that you want to be able to take advantage of, right? So once you're done with that, you want to synthesize, right? So the goal in this discovery process, you're essentially taking notes, right? Writing down as many things as you can possibly find out, right? What's the environment Kim's in? How many patients is she seeing? What's it like when she's busy? What's it like when she's not busy, right? What happens when, the computer goes down? What happens when there's anything, right? What happens when the doctor interrupts her? What happens when there's the printer runs out of paper? Anyway, find out all those things. In this case, we're doing an infinity diagram, right? So we took this 30-foot-long whiteboard, one of my favorite whiteboards of all time. We put every issue we found on its own Post-it note, and we organized them in a way so that what we did was we had some kind of prioritized list or organized list of what we thought were the key problems that we saw, right? So in this case, it might be, something we discovered. Kim is interrupted, really frequently, right? Constantly. Never mind, I won't make up figures. We'll just keep on with this. So once we've done that, right, once we have a synthesis, we can actually take some of this information and we can use it to describe Kim's day or a part of Kim's day and sort of look at some of the important pieces, right? This is a chunk of a journey map. It sort of shows a couple of things that during Kim's day, sort of the main path is blue, but we have a couple of interruptions here, and we also have the place where she's supposed to collect payment. Looks like that may or may not happen. Hard to say. Something that should actually go along with this journey map is some kind of analysis of pain, right? So how much of a problem is that interruption, right? We're not actually quantifying it here, but I want to know that because I want to kind of know, which one is worth fixing, right? Is there something I can do here, or is there something I should do there? And once I know that, then I know what to work on first, right? Because usually when you're talking about a journey of any kind of complexity, there's probably more than one solution, right? So we want to make that choice. We also looked at our own product, right? So if the team, this team looking at this thing, we know we've got something that doesn't match Kim's workflow, right? Lots of extra complexity, way more than we want, and that's also useful information. The other thing we wanted to sort of discover, right, and something that we were paying attention to was Kim's attitude, right? Because it turns out that there's sort of an emotional component to problem solving, right? And knowing how the job makes Kim feel and how the products that she has to use makes her feel is really important. It's kind of an indicator, right? It's like a synchronous indicator to how well the product is meeting her needs, right? So if something is making her mad, if something is frustrating her, then that it looks like it might be something that we're sort of should be concerned about, right? The goal here is actually not to make the goal really is to make the software kind of transparent, right? Software is a tool Kim uses to see patients and record information about them. She actually doesn't come to work to use software. She comes to work to make sure patients get in to see the doctor, right? So it's that thing that we want to enhance, right? We want to take the software out of her way as much as possible, right? So this is what Kim thinks about herself. This is a little bit about her workday. Again, this is stuff that we discover in research. This is stuff we confirm in research. It may even seem obvious in retrospect, right? We've all been to the doctor. We've all been sort of in the waiting room and watching how hectic that can be. So that leads to, so that once we sort of feel like we've got the problem understood, right? Now we can start to actually solve it, right? In this case, this is a couple of iterations in, but these kinds of sketches can start in pencil, like start on the whiteboard, they start in discussion, right? These are things we already do. What I'm suggesting is we do them now with a little bit of input from the user. In this case, right, so the thing we want to be able to do here, so some of the obvious stuff is actually reduce the number of screens we're looking at. Makes sense. Want to get the workflow organized, want to make sure that the workflow matches the kind of conversation that Kim has with the patient, right? So if first it's, who are you? Let's make sure you're identified and in the system, make sure your appointment is confirmed. Now let's get the paperwork done, and finally let's actually collect some cash, because it turns out it's a $10 copay. We want to make sure that's actually built into the software in an organized way, right? So part of the proposal is that. And then last word there is validate. Always, as much as possible, showing what you've got in this phase or even before, right? Whiteboard, pencil sketch or whiteboard or whatever. The advantage to that is you want to be able to show that to users or to user advocates like your customer service folks and so on, because you want as much input as you can before you spend all the time doing development. So that's kind of where we are. So we'll leave this at a moment, and we'll sort of talk about this, right? So this is, come on up, Kim. So this is the human-computer system, right? We tend to focus on the computer, and at InterSystems we spend a lot of time looking. I mean, we're a technology company. We spend a lot of time solving technology problems, and we're really, really good at it. That's great. The part we're missing is, right, we're not always thinking about our users in a sort of a deliberate way, right? We're making some assumptions about them. Maybe even over the years we've collected some mythology. So it's important to sort of think about this and keep the user in the picture. And the question is, when can you do this, right? And so you can actually do this throughout the process, right? I mean, I think if you keep it simple, keep it sort of short and to the point, you can actually talk to users or incorporate user feedback at any point during the process. And we're talking about before, during, and after. During is sort of the product development process, right? This is coding development. Before, obviously, is before that starts. After is after the product's out in the field. The biggest advantage you have is actually before, right? This is sort of the cheapest place to get user input. You haven't spent the time to code. You haven't done any big investment. Haven't made any mistakes that you have to unravel and go back from, right? So this is the time when if you've got the time and you've got access to users or their sites, or if you're building for internal users, right? You actually want to go visit them and see what they're doing, right? Take a look at their desk, take a look at their environment. How many Post-it notes have they got to themselves? Do they bang the mouse when they reach a certain screen? All of these things that are sort of key to observation, right? You can fill in with interviews. Why did you bang the mouse? What's that Post-it note? Did you write your username and password on that thing where anyone can see it? Any of those questions are right and proper, right? Same thing with internal. Third thing down there is analogous. So these are basically looking across industries and looking for other places, right? When I'm designing for healthcare, I look for other really complicated, complex situations and scenarios. So I may I look at other industries like financial industry or the insurance industry, right, to see how they do it. Is there any inspiration I can get from there? Again, full court press. Any of this is really better than none. So during the scenario, during the development process, think about when you have an opportunity to pull a user into your thinking. One way to do it is to do user testing or usability testing. This is basically taking some kind of prototype, and this can be sketches, stuff that's stitched together, anything like that. Really anything, and asking a user to sort of do a task that they would normally do, and see how they respond to a screen, right? So in the past, I've taken literally pencil sketches, showed them to users, asked them to, check in a patient here. Let's see what would you do first? And then talked them through what I would expect to happen, and gotten their input on that. The advantage of that is when things are really in a rough state, right? When they're sort of still in sketch mode, your end users are going to, like Kim, they're going to feel more sort of free and available to have input, right? If you wait till something's completely done, they're going to say they like it, and wait till you leave to tell you they're frustrated, or to be frustrated. People want to help, right? And they want to be sort of pleasing. They know you've done a lot of work in the software, and so they're not going to necessarily take the time to go deep for you, right? So this is something that I sort of like to take advantage of, right? I want to show people things in as unfinished a state as possible. You tell them this is where it is, tell them this is what you're trying to do, and then sit down with them. And it doesn't have to take long, and you don't have to do a whole lot of it to uncover, things that you've done that are sort of, that may be wrong. Only thing I'll say about after is when you're user testing afterwards, this may be the lessons that you learn for the next release, right? You may not uncover anything that's egregious enough to actually go back into code and say, oh my God, I got to fix that. It may be too late anyway, and so on, right? Sometimes that happens, but there's a lot of learning you can do here to see if there's anything you can do better next time, right? Because this stuff is sort of additive, right? The more of this that you do, the sort of easier it gets, and the better we all are, right? So sort of coming down to the close here, the goal of this is to gain the user's perspective on the problem, right? To try and understand as much as you can what they're going through in sort of the average day, and what they're using the tool for, trying not to make any assumptions about what they're doing sort of on their behalf that might be wrong or misinformed or out of date. So last comment, your users, they really know their problems better than you do, right? So this is important, and you know your technology and therefore your solutions better than they do. And the important thing is both things matter, right? And so the important thing is that you sort of bring them into the mix and make sure that you're listening to them at some point, right? And practice. It takes practice. You're probably not going to be perfect first time out of the gate with this. That's okay. I would say keep trying, because people want to help, and you will get better at this. So a couple of UX references. Steve Krug is a guy he's one of the guiding lights. He's out in the Boston area. He wrote this book called Don't Make Me Think. It's a short read. And it's a very good introduction to usability and web design. Doesn't get to the depth of the kind of tools that we're usually thinking about, and it's probably not the kind of users that we're usually thinking about, but it's a very good introduction nonetheless. And then over here is Don Norman's Design of Everyday Things. It's here that he introduces the idea of user experience and perceivable affordance. This is also a good book. It's been around a long, long time. It's another pretty quick read. So let's stop here. So the usual boilerplate, survey, et cetera, et cetera. let's take the last few minutes and answer any questions you have. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and come to the mic.
Hi. I just have one question.
Sure.
So you had HealthShare on there, and you said that 4 people isn't enough to kind of redesign or refactor HealthShare.
Yep.
We've been using HealthShare for 3.5 years. I can tell you that it has been a struggle. Anything from the iframes to modal windows, our docs and our users are not happy with how it was designed. What do you see in HealthShare, and how can UX bring insight into how users really use HealthShare?
Well,
what are kind of the things that you guys are working on?
We're going to, really good question. And in HealthShare in particular, we're looking at the clinical viewer right now, and we're looking at the care manager, the new care manager product, right? And so a couple of things like that, and in a few surrounding areas, and actually mostly. I want to talk to you because I want to hear about that and make sure that that's actually well represented back at InterSystems. Because I think we really want to smooth out some of those things, and it would be very helpful to do that. I don't think I'm answering your question exactly, but is there more I can say? It's the what? Yeah, the main points. Sorry. What else? What other questions? Clear and clean? Let me ask you guys one. How many of you are working with user experience groups already? Okay. Where are you from? Okay. Okay, cool. And where are you from?
Seattle Children's.
Seattle Children's, okay. Is this very cool? There was one more hand out there somewhere. So is this, when you're working with your user experience groups, are they embedded per team? How are you working with them?
Well, in my case, it's a group of subject matter experts, people actually do the job.
Okay.
I need a way to get them empowered so that they feel comfortable giving me because it's an environmental thing.
Yep. So what do you mean when you say we need a way to get them empowered to do what?
To actually give a workable user experience design. I'm not a graphic designer. I wire them up.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
It's hard to get them to engage at the level of saying we want it to look like this.
Okay. So it's hard to get your user experience experts to engage at the level of we want it to look like this, to sort of, okay. So, that's interesting. I mean, we can talk more later on. Just one thing I'll say is get the group of them together, right? For, if you bring them in for a couple of hours, you try a thing called a design workshop or I think it's a design studio or something like that. If you search for that on the web, there are sort of instructions about how a reasonable method to pull a group together and go through that process. And then the question is, you'll sort of give them something that they can then go and finish off. If they're just shy of visual design skill, right, or visual design chops or whatever, that may be something you have to go outside to get, right? Pull a contractor in and ask them to sort of finish something off for you. That may be the only answer, or a best case answer. But yeah, let's talk later. That's probably a deeper subject. What else? Oh yeah, sure. So the question you want to.
Design experience. I know exactly from a personal perspective, we've been doing development, and the more you have your users engaged,
yep,
the higher the probability the project's going to succeed. And it's just ironic that I had 2 different projects. One project where the users were not engaged, and it wasn't their fault, it was just the the way the project was led and just their commitment to what they were doing with the design. And we adapted using a lot of sketches. We use a product called Sketch and then Envision's project, where we're developing the user interface as close to what it's actually going to look like. So the user is engaged from the very beginning, where there's no coding taking place, where you're making prototypes as quickly as possible, and you're engaging with the customer to give them what they want.
Okay.
And it adds to a much more positive experience.
Cool.
The second project that we worked on, it's proving to be much more successful because the users have been actively involved since the design phase and now involved in the coding and testing phases as well. And we're working as, well, we don't like this, and it's a lot quicker to turn around the code and design it. And the other thing is, as a comment across whether it's HealthShare or InterSystems, it's important to be consistent, at least in the application perspective, even though it may not seem to be important because you've got different applications doing different things, but just little things about consistency in terms of just labeling and all these little things that define you as an organization, versus the application, what it does. And
absolutely true. Thank you. Are your users internal, external?
They're internal users.
Internal, okay.
And it's all web development, so it's for consistency.
Yeah, excellent.
It's hard, as a developer, it's a humbling experience. And I've been on the other side of the coin where you've developed in the black box and you think you've got this greatest tool, and then you turn out that you totally missed the mark on what the user really expected.
Yes.
And I'm hoping, I was, one of the things you said in the beginning about your team not having enough people, that's a concern, especially what this gentleman was talking back here about, just HealthShare. You don't have enough for them. Now what about, Iris, the Iris platform, in terms of just getting the interface to the application or to the database so that it's consistent, so it doesn't look somewhat disjointed, that everything, whether you're in the studio or atelier or whatever, that everything is consistent.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. All right, well, I see that I'm about to get gonged off, so we should stop here. Thank you very much for coming.